Let's take a quick look at sovereignty, authority, power, looking at past leaders and current leaders within Russia, from kind of the fall of communism to what we have now in Russia. So, in 1991, we have a failed coup. In August, there's an anti-reform. The conservatives in the Politburo, that's the kind of the group there, head of the Communist Party, launched a coup against Gorbachev. Gorbachev was leaning towards these new reforms, and they didn't like it. So the coup leaders were afraid that the Soviet Union would soon break up, which they were correct. And the coup leaders hoped that the party, state, and military would back them up, support them, and they put Gorbachev under a house arrest. So what happened there? Yeltsin, which remember you had all these different republics within the USSR. He was the president of Russia, the Russian Republic at the time. And what he did, though, was spoke out against the overtaking of Gorbachev and the coup. So the popular protests kind of break out, and military refuses to then back the coup leaders, and Gorbachev is then put back into power. So here's a little bit of a look from that failed coup.
Now, on August the 19th, 20 years ago, Muscovites had tanks rolling past their windows as a state of emergency was imposed. A group of hardline communist officials attempted to seize power to prevent reforms that eventually led to the breakup of the Soviet Union. But as RT's Tom Barton reports, despite the dramatic events unfolding in the capital, many were being kept in the dark.
If you turned on your TV set in Moscow on the morning of the 19th of August, 1991, this is what you would have seen: Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. Why? Asked many Muscovites. Because on the streets, this is what was really happening. There was confusion and panic, even among the tank crews themselves.
We were ordered to march towards Moscow. I thought I'd figure it out when I get there, as we weren't given any information as to what was happening.
Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev had been shut in his holiday home in the Crimea. A state committee on the state of emergency declared itself in charge. It was made up of high-ranking Communist Party officials, including the head of the KGB, Gorbachev's vice president, and the defense minister. They were terrified that Gorbachev's democratic reforms and the Union Treaty, due to be signed on the 20th of August, would give so much power away from the center to the Soviet republics, it would destroy the Soviet Union.
It was an act of treason on the part of Gorbachev and Yeltsin and their circle. Outright treason. They were going to ruin our country.
In a press conference later that day, they said that Gorbachev was ill and that they would take over in his absence. But their show wasn't convincing. On the 19th of August, Vice President Gennady Yanayev and the other members of the emergency committee sat in this very spot in what has since become my offices. As he delivered his statement, the assembled journalists noticed that his hands were shaking. Then one 24-year-old journalist blew his official words right out of the water.
Tell me, do you realize that you've conducted a coup d'etat?
They looked pretty ugly, very unconvincing, and I guess I just got mad.
Meanwhile, on the streets, the Russian Supreme Soviet building, the White House, had become the center of resistance to the coup. Boris Yeltsin, the president of the Russian part of the USSR, had convinced some of the tank crews to switch sides. People flocked to join him and demand Gorbachev's return.
If Yeltsin tells you that both Yazov and your commander are traitors and enemies, whose orders will you obey?
As night fell on the 20th of August, a curfew ordered by the coup organizers raised fears of an assault on the White House. When armored vehicles began moving through a road tunnel in the night, protesters, disillusioned with the Communist Party, rose up to defend their hopes of democracy. Lyubov Komar's son, Dmitry, was killed.
He fell out onto the road where his friend Vladimir tried to drag him away, while the machine rode over my son's head and killed Vladimir as well.
The coup had failed, and what's more, it destroyed trust in the Communist Party, which was then banned in Russia in November 1991. By the end of the year, the very system they sought to keep alive, the Soviet Union, had ceased to exist. Tom Barton.
So that leads to the fall. Again, all the republics then declare independence for after the fall of the Soviet Union. Gorbachev is forced to announce the end of the Soviet Union, meaning he's actually out of a job. And then Yeltsin, like I said, was very popular in the Russian Federation. He becomes kind of emerges as the president of the new country, Russia. So his troubles continue there. Yeltsin constantly was in a battle with Parliament because there are all these ex-communist individuals of the Communist Party that were elected. They fight his policies, especially the constitutional reform. He tries to dissolve Parliament, which he can, but then Parliament tries to impeach him. So again, they have a way to impeach by the Duma and the Federation Council going through that process. Parliament attempted to seize control of the national TV, called for the army to overthrow him. Yeltsin and the army then attack Parliament, and then finally new Parliament and Constitution is created. So Yeltsin, he kind of wanted more of a Western-style democracy, so they create that Constitution in 1993. You have 3 branches of government, the head of the government being the president. The lower house would be the Duma with a prime minister, and that's kind of what Parliament is and makes most of the laws. Under Yeltsin, they had an idea of shock therapy, so opening up the markets completely, immediately opening it, which is probably not a good idea. You should probably do that slowly, and the economy stalls. Yeltsin also battled illnesses and alcoholism during his time, and no government or economic stability. So again, within that, he was firing and hiring prime ministers throughout his tenure. Then comes Putin. So Putin served in the Soviet Union in different positions. Yeltsin resigns before the election, so Putin at this time was the prime minister. Then he becomes the acting president before the election to give him a kind of an advantage there in the election. He's former KGB, and he's moved away from the democratic system that they kind of wanted and become more of an authoritarian leader. Has more of a illiberal democratic system in Russia. So looking at that illiberal or procedural versus substantive. Illiberal and procedural democracy, yes, the elections occur, but are they always honest? There's not much transparency. A lot of times civil liberties aren't guaranteed. Enfranchisement may not be universal. That sometimes happens, not the case in Russia. And there's very weak civil society. Substantive would be more like the UK and the United States, liberal democracy, free press, a lot of transparency, civil liberties are guaranteed, and again, a very strong civil society. Putin, the authoritarian leader, again, has done some things. So he's shifted from federalism to more centralized, making most of the decisions in the Kremlin there. Cracked down on regional autonomy, so allowing the different regions to have less power. So he can remove governors now. There's 85 regional governors. They're appointed within the region, but he can remove them. He changed that Federation Council where the governors and regional Duma heads may no longer serve. So people that were kind of elected no longer can serve. They changed from a mixed system to SMD and back to a mix. So he's changed the electoral system for the Duma different ways, and every time it's kind of helped his political party. He also has recently extended the presidency to 6 years. And this is the idea of nomenclatura again. He's putting people in power, and this is kind of the old Soviet way that he trusts, and he puts them in important positions. So kind of does he follow the Constitution? 1993 he limits the president to 2 consecutive terms. So what he did, he served a couple terms, then he endorsed Medvedev as his replacement. He served a term, and then Putin came back and re-ran, also extended that presidency to 6 years so he could be in power. When he was not president, he was the prime minister and kind of making and calling a lot of the shots.